first time Karen yelled at us, the sound echoed off the cottonwoods like a siren. "Put that fire out right now. This is private property." It was just after sunset. My brother Jake and I were setting up camp beside the creek, 2 tents, a fire ring, and a cooler full of burgers. The air smelled like pine and burnt mesquite, the way every weekend should. I turned, tongs in hand, and saw her marching down the gravel path in pink sneakers and a floral visor. Clipboard tucked like a weapon. She didn't ask who we were. She ordered. "This land is part of Willow Creek, HOA, she barked. "Camping's forbidden under Section 4A of our community bylaws." I just smiled. "Then you might want to double-check your map, ma'am." She didn't like that. Her lips pinched into a line so tight, you could have used it as a level. Behind her, 2 men from her neighborhood watch trailed along, flashlights out, phones recording. I could already tell what kind of operation this was. Karen wasn't here to enforce rules. She was here to perform authority, Jake muttered. "She's serious, man. You think she knows we closed on this parcel?" "She doesn't know anything yet," I said quietly, "but she's about to." See, the creek lot wasn't part of Willow Creek, HOA anymore. The developer sold it years ago, after the floodplain map changed. We'd bought it 3 weeks earlier at auction cash, clean title, notarized, but, judging by Karen's clipboard, she hadn't read the same paperwork. That night, she called the county sheriff. We watched from our tailgate as the deputy's SUV headlights rolled up the dirt road. Karen waved her arms like she was flagging down a plane. I half expected her to start handing out citations herself. The deputy, a calm guy named Walker, listened to her rant for 5 full minutes before walking over to us, double quotes, "Evening, folks," he said, shining the beam just low enough not to blind. "Mind telling me whose land this is?" "Sure thing." I handed him a manila folder, our deed, the plat map, and the recorded transfer, all time-stamped and certified. He flipped through it, nodded once, and looked back at Karen. "Ma'am, this property isn't under your HOA's jurisdiction anymore." Her face went blank, then red, then tight again. "That can't be right. The bylaws, the county's map overrides HOA bylaws," he cut in gently. "You might want to verify before confronting folks next time." Jake smirked. "I tried not to." Karen stormed off, promising she'd have this fixed. I knew what that meant. The next morning, our mailbox, newly installed at the edge of the lot, was stuffed with printed HOA violation slips, each one more dramatic than the last. Unauthorized occupancy. Fire hazard. Unapproved structure. All of them signed K. Halloway, HOA president. Jake laughed. "She's gonna paper us to death." But it wasn't funny when our camp gear went missing that night. The cooler, the folding chairs, and one of the solar lamps gone. Only fresh tire tracks near the trailhead. I installed a trail cam the next morning. 2 of them. Actually, one obvious, one hidden. Then we left a decoy cooler right by the fire ring and waited by midnight. The footage showed exactly what I suspected. Karen's white Lexus SUV, creeping up the trail. Headlights off, with one of her watch buddies loading our things into the back. Petty theft. Sure, but it told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't trying to enforce rules. She was trying to drive us out. So I started documenting everything. Every notice, every voicemail, every confrontation. Date, time, GPS coordinates. I downloaded the county GIS overlay to cross-reference the parcel lines, and marked the HOAS boundary pins with fresh orange paint. Each one landed exactly where our deed said it would, 57 feet south of Karen's fence line. She'd been wrong from the start. A week later, she escalated. We came back from town to find a brand new no trespassing HOA property sign hammered into our driveway. Fresh post. Still warm paint. Jake just looked at me. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "Yeah," I said, pulling out my phone. "It's time to bring in someone who knows the law better than she does." That night, I emailed a property lawyer named Mason Colaguy, who'd handled a dozen HOA overreach cases in the county. I attached the deed, the cam footage, and copies of Karen's fake citations. His reply came the next morning. "You're solid. They have zero jurisdiction. Keep collecting proof. I'll draft a cease and desist and verify the boundary through a licensed surveyor. Let's make this official." I looked at the message and smiled. Karen wanted a fight. She was about to get on in-court filings and county records, the kind that leaves a paper trail she can't shred. By the time the surveyor's truck rolled up, Karen had already called the sheriff again. It was 9 in the morning, mist lifting off the creek, and you could smell fresh coffee from Jake's thermos. The surveyor, a steady guy named Ray Delgado, stepped out wearing an orange vest and a grin like he'd seen this movie before. "Let me guess," he said. "HOA thinks they own your dirt." I nodded. "She's convinced our ranch sits on her imaginary kingdom." Ray chuckled. "Classic. Let's pull some pins and end the fantasy." We followed him along the ridge with tripods and metal detectors. The ground was damp, each step crunching through leaves and gravel. He paced, measured, checked GPS coordinates, then stopped. "Here's your corner," he said, planting a bright blue flag. "See that oak tree? That's your north marker. HOA boundary stops way back there." He pointed to Karen's fence line, almost 60 feet away. Jake filmed everything on his phone, while I marked the coordinates. Every reading matched our deed exactly. Ray took time-stamped photos, added them to his report, and signed off, on site. That's when Karen showed up again. Same visor. Same clipboard except now she brought reinforcements, her vice president, a retired accountant named Doug, and a neighbor filming from the passenger seat of a golf cart. "What's going on here?" she demanded. "You can't just put flags wherever you want." Ray stayed calm. "Ma'am, I'm a licensed county surveyor. These are legal markers." Karen crossed her arms. "This area belongs to Willow Creek, HOA. You're trespassing." He held up his credentials. "No, ma'am. I pulled the plat records from County Clerk's Office Parcel 7B. Was sold out of the HOAS domain in 2016. You're standing on the new owner's land." Doug squinted at the flag. "That can't be right. We've always maintained this trail." Ray smiled politely. "Maintenance doesn't equal ownership. The county records are pretty clear." Karen's face twisted. "We'll see about that." She spun around, phone already to her ear. Jake whispered, "You think she's calling her lawyer?" I shook my head. "She's calling her gossip circle." That afternoon, the HOA Facebook page exploded. Posts about illegal squatters, unsafe activity, fire hazards, near community property. They even used a photo of our truck. I printed every post with timestamps, usernames, and IP trace headers. Defamation's still defamation when you do it online. Mason, our lawyer, was ready. He filed a cease and desist letter against Karen and the HOA board registered mail, signature required. It cited harassment, trespassing, and unauthorized removal of personal property with photos of our stolen cooler attached. The letter ended with one sentence that I still love reading. Further interference will be met with legal action and a verified complaint for damages. Under Civil Code Section 1940.2 and Penal Code Section 602. Translation: stop or pay. 2 days later, Karen tried one more stunt. We came home to find construction tape across our driveway and a sign reading, "Notice, pending HOA review access RSTIT Jake, just laughed." She's lost it. I didn't laugh. I called Mason, then Walker, the same sheriff's deputy who'd been out here before. When Walker arrived, his tone was all business. "Did you folks put this up?" "Nope," I said, handing him the footage from our gate cam. Timestamped last night, 10:47 p.m. He watched the clip of Karen and Doug hammering the sign into the dirt. Then he sighed. "All right. That's enough." He radioed dispatch, requested a case number, and started removing the tape himself. "Deputy Walker," I said quietly, "we're about to build here. You think this'll stop?" He looked me dead in the eye. "Not until you make it official. Get your permits, stake your fence, and document everything. Once the county recognizes it as an active ranch, the HOA can't touch it." That was all I needed to hear. 2 weeks later, the first delivery truck rolled up with fencing materials and a prefab barn kit. Jake grinned, like a kid on Christmas. Karen. She watched from her porch with binoculars, phone glued to her ear, the moment we broke ground. She filed a complaint with code enforcement. claiming we were destroying a protected easement. Only problem there wasn't one. When the county inspector came out, clipboard in hand, I met him at the gate with a folder thicker than his. "Here's the plat map," I said. "Here's the certified survey, time-stamped GPS data, deed, and the boundary photo set. Oh, and here's the HOA complaint, for context." He flipped through, looked up, and smiled. "Well," he said, "this is about as clear as property rights get. You're good to go." They're not. The next day, Karen received her own letter from the county planning department. It warned her that filing false code complaints could lead to fines or even misdemeanor charges. Jake read it out loud by the fire that night. "You think she'll calm down now?" I poked the coals, watched the sparks float up into the dark. "No," I said. "She doubled down before she folds." And I was right, because just a week later, she did something so desperate, triggered the sting. Operation that ended her HOA reign for good. It started with the sound of an engine idling outside our gate at dawn. Jake peeked through the barn window. "Ah, you're gonna want to see this." Karen's Lexus sat at the edge of the property, hazard lights flashing, trunk open. Beside it, two hired landscapers, unloading metal stakes and plastic fencing. She was pointing, pacing, directing them right onto our land like a general in a suburban war. Jake grabbed the camcorder. "You think she's building a wall now?" "Something like that," I said, grabbing my folder. "Let's end this the right way." By the time we walked out, Karen had already noticed us. "This whole section," she announced, waving dramatically, "is community-maintained space. You can't build a ranch here." I stayed calm. "Karen, we've gone over this. County says otherwise. So does our lawyer. So does the surveyor you yelled at last time." She ignored me. "You people think you can just buy your way into Willow Creek and do whatever you want. I'll have you out by next week." Jake whispered, "Want me to call Walker?" "Already did," I said, tapping my phone. "He's on his way." 15 minutes later, 2 county vehicles turned up the gravel road. Deputy Walker's cruiser and Ray's orange surveyor truck. Karen froze. Clipboard halfway up like a shield. Walker stepped out first. "Morning, folks. Got a call about a boundary dispute." Again, Karen launched right in. "They're trespassing on community land. Look at those fence posts they're putting up." Walker gestured for Ray to handle it. Ray flipped open his tablet, GPS already loaded. "All right, let's verify." He walked to the nearest pin, scanned, then cross-checked with his county overlay. After a few silent seconds, he looked back. "Yep," he said. "Confirmed. Boundaries exactly where we marked it before. These posts," he pointed to ours, "are well within their legal parcel. You're standing on their property, ma'am." Karen's face went through all 5 stages of disbelief. "That can't be right. The HOA maps are outdated," Ray interrupted. "Last revision was 2015. County supersedes those records." Walker added quietly, "Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you and your contractors to step off this property." Her landscapers looked at each other, then at her, then started loading their tools back into the truck. Karen tried to protest, voice rising. "This isn't fair. They're ruining our community. They're setting a terrible example." Walker's tone hardened. "Karen, you filed for false reports, vandalized private property, and ignored to cease and desist letters. At this point, you're bordering on criminal trespass." Jake caught it all on camera, zoomed, steady, perfect audio. Karen took a step back, hands trembling. You can't talk to me like that. I'm the HOA president." Walker raised an eyebrow. "Not anymore. County records show your association's registration expired last quarter. No renewal, no authority." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the creek seemed to stop moving. Ray pulled a printed form from his clipboard and handed it to me. "Here's your verified boundary certificate. Officially logged. Frame it if you want. It's bulletproof now." I smiled. "Oh, I will." Karen didn't say another word. She just turned, got in her SUV, and drove off tires, spinning gravel like confetti at her own downfall by week's end. The HOA board held an emergency meeting in the clubhouse. I didn't plan to attend until Mason, my lawyer, suggested we should Never underestimate the power of showing up with evidence, he said. So I did. When I walked in, the room went quiet. Karen sat at the head of the table, red-eyed, surrounded by her board. Mason placed our folder on the table. Full deed copy, survey report, sheriff's statements, and printed screenshots of Karen's posts accusing us of squatting. He spoke calmly, like a surgeon closing a case. Ladies and gentlemen, my clients own parcel 7B, in full, outside your HOA jurisdiction. Continued harassment or misrepresentation of that property will be considered civil defamation and grounds for damages. You are hereby instructed to update your boundary records within 10 business days. Doug, the vice president, cleared his throat. We didn't realize the plat lines changed. Mason nodded. Then, now you do. No one looked at Karen. She sat stiff, silent, eyes locked on the folder that had just dismantled her little empire. After the meeting, Mason leaned toward me and said quietly, "That's what justice looks like. Paper over power." 2 months later, our ranch was complete. Fences up, barn built, horses grazing. Walker stopped by one afternoon, just to check on the progress. "Place looks good," he said, tipping his hat. "Heard Karen moved out." "Yeah," Jake said. "Rumor is she sold her house and resigned from the board." Walker smiled. "Guess the new owners won't have to deal with fake violation slips." We laughed. The sound carried out across the pasture that night. I stood by the same fire pit where it all started, the one Karen once tried to shut down, and watched the embers glow against the night. We didn't just buy land. We reclaimed peace. Boundaries matter. Not just on maps, but between people. So if someone tries to bully you off what's rightfully yours, don't yell. Don't rage. Document. Let the proof do the talking. Because out here, justice doesn't shout. Stands its ground.